great to see so many of you on the line, and we're really looking forward to this, which is the first of a number of webinars that we're planning on the topic of markets and humanitarian response. I'll shortly be introducing my colleagues who are presenting on this webinar as well. And I'll just take you through the agenda for the session as well. It's going to be an hour-and-a-half session. I can see many of you have your microphones on, so if you could mute them, so that's in the top panel, so the horizontal panel of your screens, that would be great. Steph, would you like to do a little brief for everyone on some of the functionalities of the platform, please?
Sure. Yeah. So across the top bar, you should be seeing a button, a couple of green buttons. One of them is your microphone. So if you click on that green button, it will mute or unmute. So when you want to speak or not speak, we ask everybody to keep that muted when you're not speaking. You should also see the button with the man raising his hand, and if you click on the arrow next to that, you'll see options to raise your hand, agree, disagree, step away from the webinar, and you can also ask us to speak up or speak slower or faster, or give us applause should you feel like it. So can I ask everybody to give me a green tick if you found those buttons? Can I ask everybody to click on the agree button just to check? Great, I can see a few. Fantastic, okay, that looks good to me. I think most people have found it. So you've got raise your hand, agree, disagree, etc. Please feel free to use those buttons throughout the presentation at any time, and we'll try to monitor to make sure if you're asking us to speak up or speak more slowly, etc.
Thank you, Steph. And so you will have all seen the chat room as well. So please feel free to use that during the session. So during the first part, which will be more presentation-based, you can use it to include questions and points of clarification for the speakers. Then afterwards, we'll use it to generate discussion. And then later in the session as well, we're going to be using a poll to get your thoughts on the session itself and on what you would like to learn more about in terms of markets. So I'm going to move on now to the overview of the agenda. So we'll start with a bit of a background as to why CaLP is focusing on this topic and how. Then we'll have a presentation by CRS on a brand new or newly revised framework on market-based programming, which presents all the different market-based programming modalities and when they might be used. I'll then introduce the minimum standard for market analysis, which is based on the minimum requirements for market analysis that many of you might be familiar with, and which is now a Sphere partner guide and will be embedded into the Sphere handbook revision. Then Oxfam will present on the Markets Compass, which is an approach to help select the most appropriate tool for market analysis by context. We will then have a presentation by ACAPS, who will be presenting some of their market information products and specifically how they're integrating market analysis into their information products. Following that, we have IRC presenting the Market Information Framework, which is really stepping away from tools per se and focusing on what decisions market information can inform. And then finally, if you're feeling like you're so engaged in the topic of markets that some capacity building opportunities for you and colleagues would be helpful, then I'll present some of those. And then crucially, we really want to have a discussion on how you are engaging with markets and humanitarian crises and the new, how you might apply these new tools or these revised tools and approaches. So as you can see, we're basically taking a sort of program cycle approach. So looking first of all at some frameworks and theory, and then looking into, with the Market Compass, at the selection of tools, then at how the analysis might be used to inform programming decisions through the presentations by ACAPS and IRC. So I think that I will hand over now to CRS, to Dina Brick from CRS, who will be presenting the new market-based programming framework. Over to you, Dina. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I had a little bit more actually. The background and introductions, absolutely. So, this is just to provide as to why CaLP is focused. Sorry, there's somebody who's not muted. As well, why CaLP is focusing on this topic. Whilst CaLP's focus is on the appropriate use of cache programming, and markets is much broader than just cache programming, we want to support the routine and appropriate consideration of cache, and obviously markets is at the heart of that. So that's why the markets form part of CaLP's strategy. And last year, when the technical advisory group of CaLP was formed, we looked collectively at what are some of the challenges to achieving quality and scale in market-based programming, including cache programming. So we know there are challenges with the use, well, the systematic use of market assessment and analysis. Then when markets are used, market-based programming is used, then how those interventions are monitored, issues with staff capacity at all levels, and awareness and guidance, and then even the organizational cultures and systems that encourage the use of market-based programming are not well established. So in order to address some of these challenges, a markets working group was created under the auspices of the CaLP Technical Advisory Group, and together we're focusing on a few priority areas, including capacity strengthening, generation of research, evidence and learning on market-based programming, and then sharing and improving tools and guidance. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot today of some of the work that members of this markets working group have been doing. And as I mentioned earlier, we're looking forward to your inputs later on what else you would like to see us supporting you with. So now I will hand over to Dina, who will be talking to us about the market-based programming framework.
Great. Thanks, Isabel, and good to see everybody here. I wanted to walk briefly through a revised version of a market-based programming framework. So a little bit of background on this. Many of you may be familiar with a framework that was developed back in 2012, I think, 2013, by WP and Oxfam. CRS recently, along with Oxfam, conducted a study of a review of market support programs and humanitarian programs, so market support activities in humanitarian programs. And one of the things that came out of that review was that there was one, more complexity in the kinds of market-based programming that's really captured, and two, that we as humanitarians don't have very much of a breadth of market support activities. And part of it was due to, it was recognized that there was still some confusion on what constitutes different aspects of market-based programming. So that led to working with the Markets in Crisis group to look at our collective market-based programming and try to put the activities into a framework that is more comprehensive and a little more updated, so that we can start to look a little bit more in depth at the different kinds of market-based programming that we do as humanitarians. So about 6 months ago, we met in London. There were about probably 10 NGOs, a couple of donors, DFID, OFDA, Food for Peace called in, the Beam Exchange, CaLP, and we put together what I'm about to show you, which is trying to look a little bit more in depth at the kinds of market-based programming that we're doing. I should note it's very much a work in progress, so we're happy for feedback. I think this is one of those kind of living frameworks. So please do share feedback and suggestions as we go through this. So as you can see in front of you, we wanted to make sure that we're starting with the people we serve, and that that's always the focus of any kind of market-based program. So in this framework, people in crisis is at the very center of what we do. Next, Isabel. Oh, never mind, I got it. And you can see from what we're looking towards is sort of this continuum from emergency relief to economic recovery, although it's a circle because, as we recognize, it really should be, we should always be thinking about recovery and preparedness even from the beginning. But just to illustrate the kinds of activities that are more common in emergency relief rather than the kinds that are more common in economic recovery activities. So on the left-hand side, we're kind of mimicking an Emma map, if you're familiar with an Emma map, and the way that a value chain or a supply chain is often mapped out, which has availability on the left leading towards demand on the right. So when we're talking about availability here, we're looking at what are the kinds of activities that are enabling better availability of supplies and services to people in need. On the access side, we're looking at what are the kinds of activities that are enabling better access for people so that they can access markets, so that they can access goods and services. So anything related to the demand side. So there are a couple different ways of looking at the availability activities and the more access-related activities in market-based programming. In an emergency relief, we are often, one of the first things we're doing is using markets to make goods and services available to disaster-affected people. So this using markets is where actors are working through local markets to enable those market actors to be able to supply goods and services to local populations. So an example of this in programming could be a local procurement, so where an aid organization or a government is purchasing goods and services locally. Social sourcing, which is specifically choosing to buy from local vendors. Another example of that could be contracting with local service providers. Another form of market-based programming is when we are supporting markets. So not necessarily using them to be providing goods and services, but supporting them so that we can provide direct support to those market actors to restore or to build sufficient supply of goods and services. So this is something, probably the most common version of this that we see in humanitarian programming is providing small grants to traders to enable them to restock. This could be things like providing transportation subsidies for traders so that they're able to better have supply and to support their supply chains. It could be debt relief for vendors. So it's anything that's supporting the supporting those vendors to have good availability. And then finally, on the supply side, as we move towards economic recovery, there are market-based programs that are looking more in the long term. So this is not something that we do in the first 3 days of an emergency, but we'll be looking further down the road, and this is also what we're looking to in development programming. And these kinds of things, this is sort of working through the whole market system to build a sustainable supply of goods and services. So trainings for trade associations on business skills or enterprise development, that kind of thing. Those are activities that would fall under this part of the market-based framework. So on the access side, I'm looking now at using or supporting the local markets to ensure access to markets by people affected by crisis. So again, the same dynamic. They're often in early stages of the emergency or in emergency relief. We as humanitarian actors are using the local markets in order to provide access or to meet demands of people. So for using markets, this would be things like cash transfers. So any of our cash transfer programs would fit under this because we are enabling people to access goods and services by using the local markets. Any kind of cash transfer program, cash or vouchers for different kinds of materials. On supporting markets under access, now this is enabling market actors to improve their businesses, to increase their client base, to provide better access to quality local goods and services that are sought by the local population. So this would be things like, in agriculture, this is selling small seed packs, for example, so that you're kind of creating demand, you're kind of promoting innovation. Enabling vendors to receive digital payments, that's increasing their ability to reach a broader population in some contexts that have access to digital payment services. Societal marketing, which is enabling businesses to kind of look at what the needs of the society are, or the needs of the community are, in terms of increasing their client base. And then finally, for market system change, and again, this is more of the development kind of activities or leading towards more economic recovery. This is, again, working through the whole market system to create sustainable access to and demand for goods and services. So these are things like hygiene promotion campaigns to promote behavior change. So, start getting people to change their behaviors and to create a supply chain or a demand for hygiene products. And services and things like that. So that would be more of a market system change kind of aspect. And then in addition to the supply and the demand pieces, again, to sort of mimic the EMMA framework, the EMMA map, on the top we're looking at what is the environment, what is the market environment, and some activities that we might do to be influencing the market environment. And this could be towards policies, this could be norms, rules, advocacy. And the output thought for this, any kind of program here, is that the market environment is a driver for a well-functioning market system. And the kinds of activities you might have here would be, as noted in this framework, is advocacy to change trade regulations. It could be things like working with communities to ensure more equitable gender roles in marketing and decision-making. So anything that's supporting the market environment at that level. And then again, if you can recall your EMMA map, the bottom piece is around market services and infrastructure that supports market systems. So here, this would be the outcome for any of these kinds of projects is that market services and infrastructure are restored or strengthened or developed to support critical market systems. So this could be kinds of things like loan guarantees for microfinance institutions, rehabilitation of roads, infrastructure, ATMs, cell phone networks, provision or restoration of digital cash delivery technologies, support to improve market information. So anything that is looking at business support services or market services and infrastructure. And a final note, this last change you can see in sort of smaller text. It's just noting preparedness to resilience. So this doesn't exactly follow, it doesn't mean that every activity under using markets is a preparedness activity and anything under market system change is a resilience-focused activity. But we wanted to make sure that we're all keeping in mind about the importance of preparedness and resilience, like keeping those concepts in mind, that we are preparing beforehand as feasible for any kind of emergency, but then we are also recognizing that all of our market system change and all of our market support activities really need to be building resilience, and often are building our preparedness also to be more resilient to the next crisis. So that's it for this is the current revised market-based framework. I'm happy to take feedback and questions, and this is something we can also feed back to the Markets in Crisis group that was designing this initial framework. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gina. You did very well to explain a lot of complex concepts in a clear way, and I think the framework is a huge step towards that. We don't have time for too much discussion now, but so please kind of reflect on this for the discussion later. I see a useful comment from Martin here, Martin Pittman, our CaLP's Global Capacity Building Coordinator, saying that perhaps the diagram could be helpfully accompanied by some narrative so that we're all better equipped to be able to talk colleagues through it. I think that would indeed be helpful. So I'll continue to monitor the chat box there, and now I'm going to move us on from this framework, which has presented the range of market-based programming options, to now talking about market analysis, which of course can inform the choice of market-based programming, and what the minimum standard for market analysis is. So the minimum standard for market analysis is now a sphere partner. It means it's part of the Humanitarian Standards Partnership, which also includes LEGS, so Livestock Emergencies Guidelines, MERS, Child Protection Emergencies Guidelines, etc. And as part of the Humanitarian Standards Partnership, we're about to launch an app which will allow us to basically provide easy accessibility to all these standards in one place, including the Sphere Handbook. And what we're also trying to do is, given that cash and markets are being really heavily embedded into the current revision of the Sphere Handbook, what we are trying to do is to include the minimum standard for market analysis as part of the introductory chapter of the Sphere Handbook revision. So stating that it is, an essential part of analysis for any sector. So I'm just going to provide a link to it here in the chat box so that you have it. The way that it's structured is familiar to any of you who know Sphere well, or any of the other standards, is that there's one main standard supported by 5 key actions, which in turn are accompanied by indicators to assess whether the action has been achieved or not, and guidance notes, which provide a lot more detail and contextualization and some examples on how different market analysis approaches can be used in different contexts. So just as a little snapshot introduction, I'm going to show you what the standard is and the 5 key actions. And then there's a very useful infographic, graphic of that in the right in the introduction of the standards document itself. So the standard is that market analysis is a key component of response analysis and informs the design and implementation of appropriate interventions using and supporting local markets. And then, rather than read out the next 5 key actions, I'm just going to list the sort of headline titles of them, and then encourage you to read them yourselves. So you can see the first one is on the scope of the analysis. The second one is on the market analysis team. The third one is on data collection. The fourth on the process of analysis, and the fifth on market monitoring. So please do familiarize yourselves with this standard, and there's also a practical checklist to accompany each of the key actions, and which should help you evaluate whether or not your market analysis exercises are actually meeting the standard. So I guess the next question on everybody's lips is, well, okay, but which tool do I choose to conduct my market analysis? And this is where the markets compass comes in. So I'm now going to hand over to Alex so that he can talk, Alex Geschow from Oxfam, so that he can talk us through that. Alex, are you there? Alex, we can't hear you. I know your microphone was working earlier, but do you Can you test it again? Okay, it seems like we can't hear Alex right now. So what I'm going to suggest then is we're going to skip through his presentation and hand over to Leonie from ACAPS instead. And in the meantime, hope that Alex can sort out his sound. So I guess close your eyes, otherwise you're going to get too much of a sneak preview of what's on here. And then I will hand over to Leonie now. So yes, over to you, Leonie, please. Thanks for stepping in.
Great, thank you, Isabel. Hi everyone, I'm Leonie. I'm with ACAPS, working as an analyst and market focal point. And as Isabel said at the start of this webinar, ACAPS has been working on integrating market analysis within our overall analysis of the humanitarian needs. And the main objective of this kind of analysis will be to provide a timely, straightforward and regularly updated analysis of the role of markets in meeting the basic needs of any affected population. The main audience will be strategic decision makers across all sectors. So on the slide you'll see an infograph which represents our underlying thinking. And this is based on the minimum standards that Isabel just presented, but also on most of the other tools that are out there. So basically the framework consists of three main components, as you can see on the slide. First of all, it's the problem analysis. So looking at, okay, what has happened, what are the needs, and to what extent are those needs a result of constraints to market functioning. The second component is response analysis. And the third one would look at information gap analysis. And if we look a bit into detail on the different strains, first of all, on the problem analysis, we will review first the context, which looks at, okay, what are the priority needs right now and possibly in the future, and which of those priority needs are actually market related. And we'll look at, well, at household access related to that. Can households access those markets? And if not, what are the main constraints? Are they physical, security, maybe cultural, social? And on the problem analysis, we'll look at the prices as well and any constraints related to supply. So this focuses on the current situation, but as much on how it could develop in the nearby future. The analysis outputs of the problem analysis, if we move to the orange box there, will be the main market-related obstacles to obtaining essential goods and services, right now, but also possibly in the future. So following that problem analysis, there's obviously a response analysis, which is normally not done by ACAPS, but will be done hopefully based on the problem analysis provided by operational agencies in the area. And the third strain, the information gap analysis, looks at the state of the information landscape. So what do we know? What kind of information is still missing? And what would be the best approach to collecting that information that we need? So if we then look at the next slide. Oh, I can do that. Yeah. So this kind of analysis generated by that framework can obviously come in many shapes and forms. One of the possibilities is a report. And I wanted to briefly present one of the reports that we produced based on this underlying thinking. So in the aftermath of Hurricane Matthew in Haiti in October 2016, we published a desk review based on secondary data, looking at to what extent can markets meet the basic needs of those affected by Hurricane Matthew. And that report was published on the 13th of October, which was 9 days after the hurricane first made landfall. It was about 15 pages and consisted of 9 main components, which you see here on the slide, moving from disaster overview to, at the end, information gaps and some recommendations on how to possibly address those gaps. And because this was the first of this kind of analysis that we published. We've actively solicited some feedback on the report, but also on the underlying thinking. And in terms of feedback received, a lot of people said it was timely, that the information was useful and relevant, and that it filled a gap so that there was actually nothing else out there at that point in time. And the assessment team that looked at the state of some shelter materials in Haiti a couple of weeks afterwards indicated that they've heavily used the report and that it was actually saved them quite a lot of time in preparation for the assessment. So that was definitely an indication of that it was a useful product at that point in time in the crisis. In terms of points for improvement that we received from the reviewers, is that they suggested that we should do more active dissemination, because ACAPS is not necessarily an actor that people would turn to for market analysis related information. So we should more actively distribute any analysis that we've done. There was some feedback as well on the focus, which was not necessarily always, there were some parts of the report where it wasn't necessarily clear what the audience could directly do with that kind of information. For instance, someone mentioned it's interesting to read about the more macroeconomic environment, but there's always a bit of a question mark on how that directly relates to the decisions that people have to make at the end of the day. And one of the other things that popped up in terms of feedback is that this was an on-off report, so there was no updates, and many people said that they would have liked to see more regular updates as more information came in. So we've taken all this feedback on board, and we're working on a more improved and hopefully better concept. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Leonie. Are there any questions for some sort of points of clarification for Leonie on the new product and I suppose ACAPS's plans going forwards? If not, then do think about them as we go through the rest of the session. I think this is a really useful new way of aggregating analysis, and fantastic to hear that it could be done so quickly after the Haiti hurricane in particular. Okay, I'm now going to see if Alex's mic is working again. I hope so.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Alex. Great.
Okay,
so let me
brilliant.
just go back a few slides. So
Great. Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. So there was a nice transition from Isabel earlier on. So she introduced the minimum requirements for market analysis. So the market analysis compass, this is an initiative that Oxfam started a while ago. It has been in the pipeline for quite some time, unfortunately, and we've tried to encompass the latest developments in the market analysis field. So it's important to understand that this is not an additional tool or an additional guidance document. I think we all agree that there are already many of these documents here, but the idea is to help practitioners navigate among these numerous tools. So, Isabel, can you move to the next? Am I the one presenting?
you can do it, Alex, on the bottom left.
Okay, great. So briefly, so this is the agenda for my short presentation. So first, why? I'll try to share the rationale behind the development of the market analysis compass. Then I'll explain for whom this has been designed, what is it for, what's in it, and how to use it. So some of you might be familiar with the document that was produced, I think, pretty much a year ago by CaLP, that was comparing the different humanitarian market analysis tools. So this comparison was quite useful, but it only focuses on humanitarian tools. So pretty much a bit of preparedness, the emergency, and a tiny bit of early recovery, but it stops here. And at Oxfam, we try to cover the whole disaster cycle, And also we try to provide to carry out market analysis in the different phases of the disaster cycle, but also depending on the different programs intentions that we have. So this is in line with the market-based programming spectrum framework that Dina presented earlier. So we wanted to incorporate some of the tools that are used for market analysis outside emergencies. So this is pretty much what we added. And if I move to the next slide, so I'll try to play the link later on. But the market analysis compass is pretty much a Prezi presentation. So some of you might be familiar with the Prezi software. So it's a different way to do a presentation, a bit more interactive, I would say, and user friendly than PowerPoint. So I'll play it later on. So the compass is composed of different elements. So one core element is the different tools. So we haven't analyzed all the tools that are out there, but we focused on a few ones. So the Making Market Work for the Poor, M4P, the EMMA, the MIRA, the 48-hour tool, the minimum requirements for market analysis, the Gendered Enterprise and Market Toolkit. So this is a toolkit developed by Oxfam that focuses on value chain in long-term development with the gender lens. And if we go down here, we have the pre-crisis market analysis guidance that was developed last year. We have the two ICRC tools, the RAM, so Rapid Assessment for Markets, and the Market Analysis Guidance, MAG. We also consider the market by CRS, and the last one is the Operational Guidance and Toolkit for Multipurpose Cash Grants. So this compass was developed at the end of the Enhanced Response Capacity project last year with funding from UNHCR. So that's it can be seen as an added element to the operational guidance and toolkit for multipurpose cash grant. So these are all the tools that we consider. Basically, the compass help practitioners, specifically people at field level, I would say. So national offices, food security coordinators, but also WASH coordinators and field officers who are actually involved to conduct market analysis and who might be a bit lost or unsure about how to start. So they understand the importance of market analysis, but which toolkit to pick up to start the market assessment, it's sometimes not as clear. So another core element of the compass is what we call the disaster cycle, with the emergency response phase on the top left corner, with the early recovery and recovery phase on the top right corner. On the bottom right corner, we have the development phase, and on the bottom left corner, preparedness. So basically, there are tools that can be used in the different phases of this disaster cycle, and through the compass, we try to see which one can be used in which phase, and how they can be used to inform the interventions in the according phase. The third element of the compass is this is I would say the nitty-gritty. So it's the scope and depth of the assessment. So depending on the scope and the depth of the assessment, depending on what you want to understand, depending on the context, depending on the resources available, and depending on the program intentions, you might have to use a certain market analysis toolkit or specific tools within a toolkit. So this is another extract or screenshot from the market analysis compass. We saw the different elements that constitute that we should analyze within the context, and the level of functioning of markets, for example, it's a core element of the context. And on the right, we see what Dina presented earlier, so the market-based programming framework. So the fourth component of the market analysis compass is pretty much the decision this is linked to the disaster cycle. So do we want to carry out a light touch assessment? So, or you can also use the term quick market analysis. This is pretty much right after the shock or in the first days, early hours of the emergency. It's a question of understanding broadly how markets have been affected. So it's about going out there, observing, going out there on the marketplace, observing how markets have been affected, observing the number of traders, asking a few questions to some traders, identifying the right key informants, and having a broad understanding of the markets. So some of the tools here that help this are the MIRA, the RAM, the 48-hour tool, the WFP trader survey, the minimum requirements for market analysis, and the multi-purpose grand operational toolkit that has some elements of this. And if we want to have a more in-depth understanding of the market systems, if we're interested in the systems, not only the marketplace, there are other tools that can be used. So the emergency market mapping analysis, EMMA, this one is pretty much known. What was called PCMMA, but now what is called the PCMA, the pre-crisis market analysis, is pretty much an EMMA, but before a crisis happens. Here we also have the gender, enterprise, and market toolkit. So what is called GEM+, which is used, which can be used in the recovery phase, but this is pretty much a development tool that analyzes value chain. And if this is used in the early phase, of early recovery, it can inform future interventions. The market analysis guidance is also there. The M4P, making market work for the poor. Minimum requirements for markets. There are also elements for market system analysis. And the MPG toolkit also entails elements for market system analysis. So I'll try to play the link here. Hopefully it's going to work, so that it gives you a little taste of the market analysis compass. So when you so this is typically what we share. So this is what appears in the minimum requirements for market analysis. And once you click on the link, you will have something like this. And this is the specific module on the tools. So the first module is a general introduction that I showed earlier with the 4 different modules. If you play the whole module, it's pretty much 4 to 5 minutes. And then the second module focuses on the tools. So ideally, you play it in full screen, and you press the play button, and there is some audio. Among the different tools presented earlier, let's see together which ones can be used to inform preparedness, planning, and intervention.
Alex, I will continue playing it in the background. I think what's better is for everybody, I'm just putting the link right now in the chat box. If you all click on that, then you should be able to play it on your own computers. That's what we recommend. I don't think it's going to work on the screen here, Alex.
The PCMA provides step-by-step guidance on how to plan, carry out. Okay, so we'll share the 3 links with you so that you have a chance to go through it and to discover so what's exactly in the compass and what you can do with it and how useful it can be to your organization and to your colleagues in the field. So this is again a print screen of the module on the tools. So we have the toolbox here, the question mark to illustrate, sometimes the confusion that people can have. And here, these are some of the tools that I introduced earlier. And below the tools, we have a one-pager that summarizes the timing, the most appropriate timing to use this tool, what it contains, how useful it is, and the key element, the key information that will be extracted from thanks to these tools. And the third and last module of the market analysis compass is about case studies. So this is probably the most exciting part of the market analysis compass. And the idea is to make things practical, right? So to use existing case studies, so interventions that were put in place a few years ago or recently, and try to see the analytical journey that led to the intervention. So again, this is an extract. So we start with the emergency phase, and we have an example from the earthquake in 2010 in Haiti. And when you play the module, there is the voiceover that explains a bit who this lady is, what type of why she was selected as a participant in a project, and what type of intervention she was involved in. And we have so unfortunately I can't play the presentation here, but at the moment we have a few case studies, and we are still adding new case studies in order to cover the whole disaster cycle. So the first phase, emergency, protracted crisis. We have examples from an Oxfam intervention in Gaza around water. So it's not only about food security; it's about the different sectors. And we are adding interventions showing what tools, how the gender enterprise markets was used, and what information came out of this analytical process, and what intervention was put in place after using the gender enterprise and market toolkit. So we will share the links of these three modules, and hopefully you have a chance to go through it. I know that some people were aware of the development of the compass, so they had a chance to check the earlier version of the compass. So now we have a product that is almost finalized, and it will give you a good idea of what the market analysis compass is. And hopefully this is something that you can use in your own organization, and it can be an additional part to a market analysis training, for example. And we'll be adding more case studies to show how market analysis can be carried out using the different tools available in the different disaster cycle phases. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. It's really great to see it coming to life, and I really encourage everybody after this session to have a look at the links that we've just shared in the chat box. I think it's a particularly good way to engage field staff on in a kind of practical way on market analysis, and particularly with all the case studies. And perhaps, Alex, if you're maybe looking for case studies that some people on this webinar might be able to contribute to, then let us know how they can do that. So I'm going to now flick through to the presentation by IRC, which is going to take us to a discussion on how we make programming decisions on the basis of market information. So over to you, Emily, please. Thanks.
Hi, thanks, Isabel. I'll go quickly because I'm conscious we're running a little short on time. So I'm Emily Sloan. I'm the market specialist with the IRC's Economic Recovery and Development Unit, and I wanted just to share a little bit about a new resource that we've been working on for the past few months, which we're calling the Market Information Framework. So this is associated with an OFDA-funded grant we're working on called Improving the Uptake of Humanitarian Market Analysis. The grant as a whole is focused on two main problems. The idea that, as Isabel mentioned earlier, even though we have market analysis sort of accepted as a standard humanitarian best practice, and even though we have this plethora of great tools and guidance on conducting market analysis that Alex was just talking about, it's still conducted inconsistently. And even when we do it, we don't always use the findings to inform programming. Of the many reasons for this, one is that there's still quite a bit of confusion about why we do market analysis in the first place. So the idea of the framework is to demystify some of this, so to clearly spell out two different things. The first is, what are the most common decisions that we make related to humanitarian programming for which we need market information? So when I talk about humanitarian programming, if we go back to the market-based programming framework that Dina was showing us, I'm talking about the stuff closer to the emergency relief side on both the supply and the demand side. So that would be interventions related to using markets and supporting markets, but in emergency contexts. And then the second part of this is for those most common decisions that we need market information for, what are the specific pieces of market-related data that we need to make each of those decisions? So to be perfectly honest, I mean, this is first and foremost a deliverable for this project, which is associated with some other project activities. But we do think that this may be useful for some other actors. So who? We think high-level decision makers and donors could find this framework useful for deciding if and when it's necessary to gather market information. And probably more practically, for people who are directly supporting market assessments in the field, this framework could be quite useful in helping teams to define objectives of a market assessment, helping to determine which tools and guidance are the most appropriate, helping to design and refine questionnaires, and to also guide response analysis. So a little bit more about what the framework is and is not, because it's a little bit confusing for some people. So we're talking about what market information is needed. We're not talking about all the other types of information that are obviously needed to make certain decisions. So a good example is for cash programming. For cash feasibility, we definitely need market information, but we also need information about things like risks or needs and preferences of the affected population. But this framework is not going to go into detail about what those information needs are. We're focused on the market side. It's also tool neutral, so we're not favoring one tool over another, but it's trying to identify, regardless of which tool we end up using, or we already know we're going to use, what information do we need to get using that tool? As mentioned, we're focused on emergency interventions, not longer-term development. And for emergency relief interventions, for the moment, we're focusing on physical goods and not services, which we thought could get a little bit too complex as we're trying to get the foundations right of this resource. A couple more points. It doesn't cover how we analyze the information that's gathered. It just talks about what information is needed in the first place. And obviously it can't address all possible programmatic decisions. So we're really trying to hone in on what are the most common ones that we make in emergency contexts. So here are those decisions. I think there have been a few revisions since this slide was produced, but it's more or less on target. So they're organized by the phase of the project cycle. So for the assessment phase, there's a question about, does the market need support in order to be able to supply basic goods to the crisis-affected population, and what kind of support? And also this focus on cash-based modality. Is cash feasible, or I should say local procurement as well, to deliver the assistance that we want to deliver? For program design, once we've determined that cash is feasible, if we have, then there are questions about an appropriate value, frequency, and payment mechanism for a cash transfer, and market information can help make those decisions. And then when we move into program implementation, it's essentially a matter of revisiting those previous decisions to make sure that they're still relevant and to determine if we need to change any aspects of the program. So this is what the framework looks like at the moment. I recognize it's been very difficult to figure out the right way to present all of this information because there's a lot of overlapping stuff and the data lists can be a bit intimidating. So this is what we've settled on for now. So in the left-hand column, again, we have the programming phase. So we just talked about that, assessment, program design, and implementation. Then we have the key decisions in the next column. So that's that list of decisions I just showed. And then for each key decision, we found it useful to divide the information into key questions that inform the key decision, that sort of break down the process of making that key decision a bit more.
And then for each key question, if you click on the question, it will take you to a separate document that then lists out the pieces of data needed to answer that key question. And then finally, in the final column, we have nodded to, but we have not spelled out in great depth, the other complementary information that is needed to make this decision. So again, going back to a previous point, we know that in most cases, additional information is needed besides market information to make a well-informed decision. So we just want to remind people of that, but without, again, going into as much detail on those other information needs. So I just wanted to provide one example of what a data list looks like. I tried to pick a non-scary one. Some of the data lists are quite long. But this is a question about are the key goods that are available in local markets of sufficient quality to meet humanitarian standards, and a few questions that support that. So the data points are listed below. So that's what you would get if you clicked on the key question. We're also going to provide this same information in an Excel spreadsheet. So all of the data points and all of the key questions would be in this Excel file. And the Excel file will be, you can filter it so that you can see for each data point, many times it will actually help you answer more than one key question. So that's the best way that we've come up with to communicate that for the moment. If anyone has any better ideas, please do get in touch. I would love to hear them. Okay, so it's been an interesting process putting this together, and I think we'll get more interesting insight as it gets out into the field and people are feeding back to us. But just from my point of view, just a few reflections I've had as I've gone through this process. First point is, in some ways, market analysis is complex. So it's funny because a goal of this project was to sort of simplify and demystify the process of market analysis. And one of the reviewers said to me, you know, this data list is really long for this key question. Is there any way we can cut it down? And as I was considering that, I sort of concluded that no, for this particular key question, you really couldn't, because you might risk losing some of the nuance that's needed to really fully answer the question, or you might miss something really important if you took out some of those pieces of information. So in some ways, considering markets is rather complex. The second point is that focusing on data rather than tools is quite useful, and I would imagine that this would be useful in other types of analysis, not just market analysis. And in some ways it can make us think differently about how we might be able to gather the information that we need. So one example that we may be familiar with is, like in the RAM toolkit, there's a fairly prescriptive methodology. There are assessment forms already prepared, and you know that you're going to have to go to a retail market and speak to, for example, small sample, like 3 retailers, and ask them the questions on the questionnaire. But with this framework, it actually takes a slightly different approach, and it says, okay, you're trying to make this decision. Here's the information that you need, and then you're free to determine how you're going to gather that information. So you might decide that actually you know a key informant who actually holds most of that information and possibly could cut down on the time that it takes to gather that information. For me, it has also challenged some of the assumptions that I had about emergency market analysis. So for example, I was indoctrinated in EMMA when I started this whole market analysis business, and EMMA is very big on comparing pre- and post-crisis market systems. And as I was putting this framework together, it occurred to me that we may not always need to do that, and in many cases it may be enough to just know what is the capacity of the market system now and what type of support the market system needs now. And you might be able to save yourself a lot of time if you don't have to worry about gathering this detailed information on what the market was like before. You may disagree with me on that, but that's something that I've sort of concluded. And then the final point is, on the flip side, in some cases we actually might need to be gathering more information than we typically gather. So for example, we typically, during program implementation, we just gather data on market prices. That's what market monitoring typically is. But according to this framework, you actually need a huge range of information during program implementation to really effectively make decisions about whether it's time to change modality, whether the market still needs support, et cetera, et cetera. So in some cases, we might be able to pare down the information that we're gathering, and in some cases, we might need to be gathering more. So what's next? We're going to be sending out a working version through the Markets and Crises Community of Practice by the end of the month. People are welcome to try it out in any way that they see useful and share some feedback with IRC via me. We'll integrate that feedback into a final version by the end of the year, and that final version will be a little bit more of an official document and will be shared in English, French, and Arabic. So I think that's it from me. I look forward to any questions that you may have later.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily. Could you just let us know how any agencies who are on the webinar today could potentially get involved in some of the field testing, if at all?
Best thing would just be to send me an email, and I'll put my email in the chat box.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to open up some space for discussion now. Oh, gosh, I keep on forgetting my bits. Sorry. Before that, I wanted to just reflect on some capacity building opportunities on markets in humanitarian response, which hopefully will allow you and or colleagues to explore some of the elements we've been touching on today in more depth. So the way in which we've presented these is in the according to CaLP's new modular framework, which for those of you who followed the capacity building webinar that CaLP presented a few weeks back, but also are familiar with our website, you'll know that we've launched a new standard training package, which includes some fundamental CTP fundamental components, and then a core module which is tailored to different participant groups. And then there are specialized courses as well. So as part of the standard training package, we have got an e-learning which was actually developed by IRC, but with some support from CaLP as well, which is an introduction to market analysis. So that is a really essential overview targeted at all different levels of practitioners and decision makers on why market analysis is important. Then looking in more depth at more specialized content. So there are 3 face-to-face trainings which CaLP has available. These are going to be rolled out over the course of this year through our regions, and we're also hoping to hold some TOTs on them. But importantly, for CaLP members, so if your organization is a member of CaLP, you will be able to access these materials yourself, including the facilitation notes. So we'll be sharing some more information on that shortly. So the ones that CaLP has produced as face-to-face courses include a 5-day course on market assessment tools. So this is effectively going through some of the steps and processes that the Markets Compass encourages, to be able to think really about what is the information that I need in order to meet my objective, and then to help choose the right tool accordingly, or the right combination of tools. Then there's an additional one which is specifically on market. It's also on tools, but specifically for decision makers, so that they can. So, for example, program directors could support teams to make the right decisions about the type of analysis that they do. And then, as a supplement to the 5-day market assessment tools training, there's also one for team leaders, so to equip staff to feel like they can lead a market analysis process. And then there's a further e-learning which was also developed by IRC with support from CaLP, which is what we call it a practical guide to market analysis and humanitarian response, and is also 3 hours, I believe, and goes through the choice of tools as well. So and all of these refer to the Compass, and in due course we will update them with some of the new developments that have been shared today. So I just wanted to recap a little bit on what we've covered today. So we've talked about the range of market-based programming modalities that there are, and how they might be selected in order to support the market in different ways according to the type of the stage of the response that you're operating in. Then talked about what is the minimum standard for market analysis and how might that be achieved through a set of key actions and indicators. How can you be better equipped to choose an appropriate market analysis tool according to context and objectives, and that's the support of the markets compass. How that information, how that market analysis information can be aggregated to support decision making on modalities and through the ACAPS products. And then through what Emily has just presented, thinking about market information as not just informing the initial decision making on what modality, what type of intervention you might choose, but really market information feeding into program monitoring and adjustment throughout the program cycle, and that's, I think, what the market information framework really adds. So, bearing that in mind, it would be great to hear some reflections from you on, for example, based on what we've presented today, how might some of these products change the way in which you currently engage with markets, or what would help you make better use of these products? I see a few suggestions coming through in the chat box now, but I'd also encourage you, please don't be shy, please use the mic and share your reflections with us so it can be a more active discussion. We will be sharing the presentation and the recording as part of a follow-up communication sent through the CaLP groups, and it will be available on CaLP's website.
Thanks.
Emily, there's a question from Laura. Would you like to respond? Emily Sloan, would you mind responding to the question? Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I just was reading the question. So Laura, for those of you who didn't see, she just asked a question about the danger of potentially scaring people off by this market information, maybe pointing out that a lot of information is needed to make decisions that we previously thought were relatively simple. And that's a very good question, and I'm not totally sure yet. These were just some initial reflections. Obviously, that's not our intention with this resource. So I think the first objective of this resource is already a step forward, which is just spelling out very clearly what are the decisions we're trying to make that we need market information for. I think that's an achievement, and even if we stop there, that's something that's useful for organizations. But in terms of I think the spelling out the data points is very challenging. So I think I'm going to have to think about it a little bit more and get back to you as I've had a little more time to process. So sorry, I don't have a great answer for you right now.
Whilst the rest of you think about further discussion points and comments, we'd like to encourage you to participate in a little poll. It's the first time we're testing this out, so please do bear with us. There's going to be 7 questions that we're going to share with you. Some are multiple choice, and some require an open field. So you'll see the first one has just been shared on your screen. So please can you all fill it in? So the first question is how many years experience do you have in market-based programming? Whether that's field level, advisory level, whatever it might be. And the reason for this is it's not a test, it's all anonymous. It really is to be able to have a better understanding of who's been on the webinar today and how we can better serve your needs going forwards. Okay, so Steph, I'd like to ask you also to bring the second question in for those who've already completed that one. So the second question is, did the webinar meet your objectives? And it's a three-part question, very simple, but we'll ask you for some more, if there's more recommendations, please do share them in the chat box. The third question is, was the webinar at the right technical level for you? Yes, no, too basic, or no, too complex? Just I can see a couple of practical questions in the chat box. If you just click, it will automatically record it, and we can see as the hosts who's clicked, whether or not it's being completed, so we can share the analysis afterwards.
I've just clicked on broadcast results, so people should be able to see what the results look like.
Brilliant, thank you.
And Izzy, the fourth question is now up.
Okay, so the fourth question requires a little bit more effort because it's a open field question, and it is, what was the most useful part of the webinar? So please do share some reflections so that we can learn from that.
Izzy, is that you making it bigger and smaller?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. I think it just might be difficult for people to type. Shall I put the final question out, or not yet? Shall we wait for more people to fill in the other rest?
So the question is, what are the topics that you are interested in for future webinars on markets? So we provided you with a few examples. This is not exhaustive at all. Please do think creatively. So whilst the rest of you are completing your answers, it's great to see the conversation going on in the chat box there, which is really about what's the essential information that we need to collect to make programming decisions around markets. And often we do collect a lot of information in market assessments that might not be essential, but perhaps we're missing other important elements. And it does seem like the market information framework is really going to help us, define that more clearly. And Emily, I think perhaps for my part, I'd be interested in a more detailed session specifically on the market information framework. Perhaps that's also something we could do going forward. So I just want to reflect a little bit then. I mean, I think most of you can see the results of the polls, and I'm sorry if it's making you feel seasick, as Christoph said. But in particular to look at which topics you're interested in for future webinars. So I'm just going to open that one up a little bit so I can see it properly. So just trying to see some of the trends that are coming through. Okay. So it seems there's perhaps a push which makes sense after this more theoretical session today to look at case studies and practical experience, and in particular at examples of market support interventions. So that's great because there's a scoping study which was commissioned by CRS which looks at the experience of market support interventions so far. There's also a review on market support interventions for food security, which was conducted by Ilan Juyah and Lily Mohideen. So there's plenty to share. And as CaLP's market working group, we've also been thinking about how we might monitor market support interventions. So that could be definitely something we can cover going forward. We'll take a proper look at this and think about how we can create a series of webinars over the course of the next year. So we're thinking they would likely be quarterly, specifically on markets, and to address some of your priorities there. We'll also make sure that we update the market section of the CaLP website with some of these new resources, and also digest your comments and feedback to make sure that this webinar is as good as it can be going forward. So I really want to thank all the presenters who did an excellent job, very engaging. Thank you to my colleague Steph, who supported with the hosting at the last minute as well, and to all of you for your participation and for your encouragement. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one.